And 3. Hey, good morning. ChukTomahawk in the house, man. How's it going?
I'm doing well. Good morning, Ovox. How you doing?
I'm not too bad. It's I think it's a little bit earlier here than it is where you are, but I'm feeling pretty good. I got my coffee, and I'm excited to talk about gaming.
Yeah, me too. It's a nice Friday morning here in Nashville, and yeah, I'm excited too. Let's get into it.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome listeners, gamers, non-gamers, PvEers, PvPers, even NPCs. We don't discriminate. We're happy to have you here. And ChukTomahawk and myself, we've been kind of excited to get this podcast going because, well, I guess, what's the origin story here? We kind of were just talking about gaming, of course, and we were talking about old games, I think. I don't remember. I think we were playing Ark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we may have been we may have been farming or something like that.
Yeah, in a long meadow run, and kind of just talking about what's out there and information and whatnot, and I think that kind of led us to this, and here we are.
Yeah, we were having like some nostalgic flashbacks, talking about Ataris and Nintendo and Super Nintendo. I think Sega came up in that conversation. There was a moment about Blockbuster too, sharing some experiences there, and I think we were both just kind of like found ourselves like just totally reflecting on those good old times, but also yeah.
That ultimately led me to start thinking about the Intellivision, and we started talking about that, and just kind of sort of started to see possibly one of the pillars of something we wanted to talk about, and enjoyed talking about, and thought you guys would probably enjoy getting in on that with us. So that kind of led to this, and I'm excited to talk about it. It's some of the best memories I have as a kid. Spending
Absolutely.
time with my friends, playing on the first generations of and second generation consoles, and it's been really fun kind of researching that and going back visiting some of those memories.
Absolutely. I mean, just chit-chatting with you about it during our regular gaming, playing Ark Survival Evolved. It's a big game we've been playing lately. A little bit of Warzone here and there, but just as you mentioned there, Tomahawk, that's kind of what we're looking to get at with this podcast, everyone, is to just kind of look back, in generations past at, we'll call it gaming culture, gaming tech. There'll probably be some other subjects that come up in there, but that's kind of what the pillar of this podcast is, or what we wanted to dive into, and who knows where it goes. I mean, we're not going to put too much production or editing, I suppose, or too much. We don't want to make it stale. We just want to have fun conversations about things past and how they've kind of evolved to date, and how they've produced the games and gaming experiences, and the contrasts that we maybe don't even realize are there. If you're a younger gamer, a lot of these things that we bring up, you've never seen, experienced, or played, perhaps, or maybe you have, but we still want to, I guess, keep them alive in a way, at least in our nostalgic thoughts. And that's kind of what we were looking to get at here with this.
Yeah, I think ultimately, as we've been talking, we've kind of looked at what are some of the motivations that brings people to gaming, and I think just as you're describing some of the when we're not super hyper focused on defeating a boss or something like that in a game, maybe doing more of a grinding farming type situation. It's an awesome time to hang out, and we really enjoyed those conversations, kind of giving each other a hard time, making jokes, that kind of thing, and we kind of thought you guys might enjoy listening in on some of that too, and I know we have fun making it and talking about it. So that hopefully that transfers through to you guys too, our listeners.
Yeah. I guess we just like why don't we hit record while we're having these convos and flying around on our wyverns, or trying to unlock all those attachments.
Yeah.
So yep, coming at you as Ovox. That's my gamer tag. ChukTomahawk here. That's his gamer tag, and we're happy to be with you. We may use cheat codes in this podcast from time to time, namely Google, because we're certainly not. I wouldn't say that we're gaming historians, so we may make a mistake here or there from time to time when talking about old stuff or new stuff. So we're gonna have that Google there ready to go. And even if we do make any small mistakes or errors, you're always welcome to write in. We'll probably touch on our contact info at the end of the podcast, but you're always welcome to write in with ideas, maybe topics you'd like us to talk about or dive into, or just corrections. We're pretty chill. We're open. You can write us. We'll leave that at the end of the podcast. What else do we got for this intro? I think that's it. Tomahawk, you kind of mentioned earlier, it was could have been taken advantage of as a segue. I didn't want to jump into it quite yet because we were still kind of knocking out this intro, but you mentioned the Intellivision, and I think you were kind of excited to talk about this topic today. So that's kind of what we're going to be discussing today, the Intellivision, what it was, what it came to be, what it converted into. I think there were a few versions there or generations. We won't dive quite into that yet. And then it evolved into a newer platform that is still a topic of discussion today, I think. It certainly was last year. And then we'll but shoot, you know what? Before we dive into the Intellivision, John, ChukTomahawk. By the way, our names may come out from time to time. It's going to be inevitable. John and Ryan.
Right.
Ovox and ChukTomahawk. But I forgot to mention before we get too far ahead, it's going to be inevitable. We're going to be chit-chatting and BSing from time to time, and I think it's just kind of fun to discuss not so topic-oriented subjects before we get into the main discussion. So what we'll always do to make it easier for you joining us and listening in is we'll leave in the show notes a timestamp, I think it's called, where the actual main topic begins. But before we dive into the Intellivision, aside from Ark, what have you been gaming on lately, Chuck?
Lately I think this is our second time playing Ark. There was kind of like maybe a year or two in between when we had played it together, and before we started into that, I was playing a game of FIFA, which I think, I saw some information. It's the most popular video game in the world, like as far as, just the number of people that play it and kind of all the sporting tournaments and things like that go on with it. But so I've came back to that recently. I've been playing. We've sort of been on a break from Ark because of a wipe coming up on our server, and
oh man, yeah,
which has been torturous for me, and I'm sure you as well. But been having thoughts of.
I think it's been harder on you, ChukTomahawk, because it still has its claws in you deep, man.
It does.
You're in that first year phase.
Yeah. I have to say the ideal of starting my own server has really crossed my mind quite a few times, but I kind of want to learn some more before I go that deep in. But I kind of. I've been playing mostly FIFA. We did do a little Warzone the other night, and that's kind of been it. And super excited to get back into Ark, like watching Ark videos and things like that. Kind of learn a little bit about how the servers work and who Nitrado is and who runs the official servers and all that.
I'm sure there's stuff. Absolutely. I'm sure there's a lot of resources you can find all that. In fact, I know there are. I've seen videos on YouTube where they kind of have how-tos and trainings on how to run servers and clusters and stuff like that. But hey, on that FIFA, man, I gotta admit, I was surprised when you mentioned I spotted it there on the friends list, who's gaming what, and I saw you were playing that FIFA, and I was like, no shit. ChukTomahawk, man, he's got that. He's busting out those goals.
I think that's always any hockey game. Like even when I think back, to these first and second generation consoles, any hockey game or soccer game, I always was attracted to. Not because I played those sports personally in the league and whatnot, but because it is so hard to score. I think there's. I saw a joke on The Simpsons once where Homer said that he had watched 100 hours of soccer and he almost saw a goal. And that's kind of how it can feel sometimes. So when you get that goal, you're coming up out of the seat, and you're super excited about it.
That's awesome. I was always sorry, go ahead. I just I never really got into sports games a whole bunch. Played some racing, played the NFL games. There was one back in the day. I think it was Blitz. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that?
NFL Blitz, I think.
NFL Blitz.
Yeah.
Man, I think that was a particularly fun NFL game because the characters, they just moved funny or they made jokes, I think, or whatever. If you'd get a touchdown or you'd tackle someone, they would do an extra power slam on the character. I think it was like that. I might be totally remembering wrong, but
what I want some memories of a robot-based game a football game that I used to have that I don't remember the name of for sure. If anybody out there
the players
does,
were robots.
And it did some things like you're talking about, yeah.
But what I was going to get at is FIFA. When I was in university, all my roommates, man, they were always I'd wake up. And I was usually the one waking up early. That's just, I wake up early. And if they were up, they were playing that game, man. And I'd leave for class. They were playing that game. I'd come back. There'd be 4 or 5 dudes on the couch just, vamos, echa gol, así, corre, súbete a la moto. No. Just totally just going. And eventually, I had to get in there, man. I had to get in there, and I'd consistently get my ass kicked. But man, just that it was fun. And I remember there was a World Cup that year, and I was into it. And then uni was over, and that was it. My FIFA kind of ended there, but it was a fun little experience.
One of the things about the multiplayer on it is there's this drop-in match sort of part of it where you kind of end up. It can be 5-on-5 essentially. It's a full soccer team, I think 11-on-11, but you're controlling there's 5 real humans on each side, kind of going at it. And
you play the real hardcore.
We've got the headsets on, and when you're messing up, people jump on you. I mean, I heard somebody the other day, one of the funny things I heard, there was a baby crying in the background, and somebody was like, "Whose baby is that?"
I'm sure they probably said some other things too.
We all laughed when he said it, and because it was like the elephant in the room, sort of. We were all hearing it, and it made everyone laugh, but I see a lot of folks from the Hispanic community on there for sure, some of my favorite interactions is, of course, my Spanish isn't super good, but it's enough, I can have a decent starter conversation or whatnot. And after playing that a while, I've learned the words that go with the soccer a little bit. And you'll have people come on there and say, kind of in broken English, hey, I don't speak that good English, but we'll try to talk to each other. That's really awesome. Fun. Yeah, it's kind of like a bonding kind of thing that you get going there. Man. And that's one of my favorite parts, believe it or not, is I enjoy an assist almost as much as I enjoy a goal. Like when you really set someone up for something super nice. It
dude, and they
really
get that. Good. Yeah, they get the cabezazo, or they get.
A nice cross to me is that's where I put a lot of the stat. There's a part in the game called Pro Clubs, and you can actually start your own player. So I have my own, ChukTomahawk. I make him as tall as me and as big as me, and no one as big as me plays soccer, so it immediately stands out. People are like, what in the world? And that's kind of his role. He's not super fast, but he's really strong, and he can kind of defend awesome. Really well. And it's been fun, but I'm ready to go back to Ark anytime.
Yeah, that's a whole different ball game there with that online gaming, with having people that you don't know connecting on there with you. Similar thing happens there on that Warzone. If you don't, if none of your boys are on, you got to kind of team up. You don't have to. You can close the team, but you end up teaming up with folks that you don't know, and you never know what country they're from. And and another thing, you know how Warzone's got that when you take out an enemy player, sometimes you can hear what that person said, the death chat. God, that's so funny, man. Because sometimes, I'll get someone, I'll get the kill, and they'll be from Mexico or from some Spanish-speaking country, man, and they'll just be like, "Puta madre la verga," and then you'll just, they'll just say something like, and it just cracks me up, man, because I know what they're saying, and it's just so funny. And sometimes when it's obviously I'm not spending time focusing on this, but sometimes like I'll notice that the person that I get is they'll get me, they'll kill me, and I'll notice that it's someone that has like a Spanish gamer tag. And if I catch that quick enough, I'll always try to say something funny in Spanish and hope that they'll hear it, and just laugh.
Yeah, that's a good time. I think it's funny that Activision puts that in there. Like it's just to kind of create a little bit of drama, I think. And I've definitely got the "you're trash" and like all that kind of like sort of feedback from people.
Yeah.
And I usually feel really stonedly like steeled against it, but every now and then somebody gets one in.
It just cracks you up.
Well,
it's like, what?
It's like, what do you do with those old guns? Like,
Sometimes there's some really funny ones, man.
I used to use the katanas a lot, and when you kill someone with the katanas, it especially pisses them off. Like, apparently, it seems like, and they'll say something like to the effect that it's like there's no skill involved in what you're doing, or anything like something like that. But
you'll get them all. But we all end up doing those things. They'll scream at you, camper, or whatever it is. It's like, yeah, I was camping, but I killed you. Hey, like I said, everyone's welcome to listening on this podcast, right, including campers. No problem. We don't mind.
That reminds me of a joke. Like, why do Boy Scouts not, or why do gamers not join the Boy Scouts?
Oh boy,
because they hate camping.
Well, some of them do. At least that's what they say.
Yeah, I kind of unapologetically do it. I feel like as a sniper, it's part of the game. But yeah, it seems like
especially if you're
really
trying to get into that mood, that sniping mood, like you're taking it seriously. You're not just running around like what do they call it? I
quick scoping.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Dang, man. ChukTomahawk, man.
Got that coffee in me.
Got me covered, man. You got me covered. Co-host. Killing it.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to take that role kind of more, philosophically, I guess, or whatever the cool word may be, but you kind of got to camp.
Yeah. Yeah. And
you got to spot, you're posted up, take a couple of shots, get a couple of kills, move to the next one.
Yeah. And I feel like Warzone does a really good job of sort of creating that feeling a lot of times. Like I was kind of mentioning to you that
I don't know about that. I think Warzone, the way it's designed, the meta is you got to be moving with your squad, and if you and your squad are in a place where you have long ranges, you bust that out. But there's never a moment really where you're like staying, unless you're playing solos. That would be different.
I guess I think more like they, obviously it's not like real life combat, but like it definitely, as far as, caring about my character, it feels that way. Like I mentioned to you the other night, like it probably is more a statement funny. About my gaming or whatever. It's like I'm constantly in fear when I'm playing this game. It's like, I just see a clump of grass. I'm like, who's that? Oh my God, it's somebody. I'm like hiding from it for 10 minutes and realize it was like just a tree or something.
And then all of a sudden there's only 4 players left and you're about to win just because you've been posted up. And
and I'll sense that's wrong, because like that's like the second question you get after you say like you won Warzone. They're like, how many kills did you have? It's like 3. counting the last one. Yeah, so that's not acceptable. Like, I feel like 4 for me is like like an acceptable number. So yeah, I'll get up and get out in there.
There's some folks out there that are and I'm not even talking about the top leagues, the people that compete in those like games like Warzone, Fortnite, any of the, gosh, man, I'm having total brain farts here. What's the name of that style of gaming? Battle Royale, excuse me.
Oh, yeah.
Battle Royale type of game. But yes, I'm not talking about those top-notch, top shelf pros, but there's just, I have friends that play this way. I'm sure you do as well. That they're just extremely good at the game, and they're not ending around without at least, between, realistically, I don't know, 10, 15, up to like 20 kills.
Yeah.
And it's nuts. And getting to play with those guys is always fun. Guys and gals is always is fun. Me, if I'm on point, if I'm on fire, I might be up in the 8, 9 kills, and it may depend if we're playing Plunder or Rebirth or regular, the larger map. But yeah, that's a really fun game, and it's a good game to go to when, like, with the way our balance going between survival game, which can be kind of slow paced, over to having Warzone and getting that out of you, that fast paced first person shooter, and get it out of your system, and then go back to Ark. It's great balance.
Yeah. I saw something the other day. I think those people that you're talking about that are getting the 20 kills a game, and then when I pop into their squad, I think they call those garbage men because they're used to carrying trash.
That's just not that.
It's funny that you mentioned that though. Like kind of gaming with folks you don't know. Like my one squad win that I've ever had in Warzone. I still remember it. Like, it was super. Like we worked together. Kind of shared some ammo right there at the end, and like, yeah, it's just a good feeling. Like a bonding.
Yeah.
Those wins are super few and far in between for me. So, the battle royale, like I do feel like there's an interesting topic there of just like how serious people take, like, just from, like, say when Warzone first came out till now, like the level of competition I feel like has really increased. And like,
oh man, and they're constantly updating that game. They got a good thing going there. It's too bad Battlefield, the folks over that with Battlefield, who are they? Are they DICE?
I think you're right. Yeah.
Let me check.
Yeah, it just didn't live up to the expectations, really,
man,
did it?
And that bummed me out, especially my brother. He was especially bummed out. Fist Pump. He was heartbroken, man, because I don't know anyone more, a bigger fan of that game. And I love Battlefield, like Battlefield 1, Battlefield 4.
Battlefield 4 was one of my absolute favorites. I played that. I think my girlfriend at the time got me that, and I played it for like a year straight. I remember my birthday came up again, or Christmas, whatever she'd gotten it for me for, like, and I was still playing it.
Yeah, Battlefield is sorry for interrupting. They're with EA and DICE. But
yeah,
Battlefield 4. Man, I know you weren't I know you played it and you liked it, but it wasn't your top shelf of the Battlefield. But Battlefield 1, man, I've had some epic gaming memories in that game. The graphics are amazing, and they still hold up. The opening scene, when they're in the tanks, I think, the opening scene in the campaign mode is like, it makes your nipples hard and your skin tingle. Like, it's just like, it's amazing. And then the realisticness, I don't know if that's a word, but of like the sniping and the bullet drop, that was always something that really blew my mind. Great game, amazing game. So yeah, it was a bummer with Battlefield 5. We had a lot of high hopes for that, and we had a little bit of fun playing that. The World War II theater. And they also had a battle royale they were trying to get going there, Firestorm. We were really excited about that. Had a little bit of fun with the initial release because there was actually a player base in the beginning because everyone was so pumped on it. Played that a little bit with Mick too. Mick is a gamer buddy of ours, and but it didn't really make it. And then I know you've been having a lot of fun on Battlefield. What is it, 2042?
I have.
But I got to be honest, man. When you look online, it doesn't look like it's the larger community's in love with it that much.
I think like part of that is that we expected a battle royale, like a Firestorm version, and really it kind of reminds me more of like a large multiplayer version is all I could really kind of get out of it. I think there is some potential there, like how you kind of mentioned the cinematicness of it. I think Battlefield gets right sometimes. Like there was a time like I was kind of squatting down behind a Hummer, and walking up a hill with some guys, and like I was like, this looks like a movie, kind of feeling. And those are fun, but it's really not getting in that place that Warzone does.
And I'm telling you, man, these guys over at Activision are just. They got a good team there. Someone's making real smart choices. They're always updating stuff. They know that we all have very short attention spans and smoke a lot of dope, and that we need to get that shit's got to keep coming fresh.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're moving on to stuff, and they're just keeping that fresh. They're keeping it moving. They're keeping it updating. Hey,
yeah,
more power to them.
Sometimes I think I
wish they'd let me get my growl back without that crazy challenge that it takes to unlock that damn rifle. Damn, man. You got to get like 25 something kills in a minute or whatever the heck. And, it's just. Sorry, I should have interrupted, but
so the growl I'm using is still the one for Modern Warfare. Like I still have it, maxed out, and that's what I was using the other night.
Yeah.
Is there I don't have any of the Vanguard guns, so
no, there's only one growl, but when I switched over to PC and I started playing on PC, I basically had to start from zero. And I know there's like a way to transfer and stuff, but I could never figure it out. And I just said, like, you know what, screw it, I'll just start fresh. It'll be a fresh KD rate anyways.
That's nice, yeah.
So I haven't had the growl since then, and that was my favorite rifle, man. That thing is a laser beam with no no attachments no scope attachment, just the iron sights, and then all the other attachments, the ones that make it real stable and all that stuff. And man, that thing is just. Fist Pump and I will argue that between the M13 and the Grau, but man, that Grau, for me, the Grau was like,
yeah. I'm glad you said that. When I went to get my guns out, it's like first loadout is the HDR and the Grau, and the second one is a shield and the katana. Is like, which one of these is gonna get the least venom out of Ovox? When he's like, what are you doing?
We're posted up, and all I see is ChukTomahawk running around Rebirth with a bunch of sticks in his hand, beating the shit out of people.
And a shield. I feel like eventually you need to just accept that could be my role. I have my shield. I absorb.
You're the anti-meta.
Yeah, I move out and draw fire. And while they're shooting at me, you do your thing.
You do what you gotta do.
Yeah. I feel like it's a distinct possibility that might be the best use of my abilities on Warzone at this point. But
that might have to be a podcast nickname, man. Chuck the Anti-Meta Tomahawk.
I used to go into multiplayer like you're talking about with just people I didn't know, filling squads, and they'd see that shield, and they just every now and then someone would be supportive, but 9 times out of 10 they're not real supportive about that whole plan kind of thing. But
that's where you see the dark side of these super competitive games. People get kind of pushy, and they tell you how you're supposed to play and stuff.
Yeah,
but it's all good.
Yeah.
Well,
kind of goes back to wasn't it in one of the first multiplayer things they had that? The only time that people could talk was kind of right there at the end, and everyone would just be yelling the entire time.
That's a thing. I think that can still happen, but that's really when you're not in a party with your squad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like if you're just in public chat and not private chat with your squad, you'll hear everything. But I think before, you're right. In the beginning of Warzone, especially, there was a time where you'd finish the round and everyone would just be yelling out every obscenity you can imagine. And then there'd be like one random dude saying nice things, and then there'd be someone with a stereo extremely loud.
Yeah.
And then there'd just be someone just yelling the F word consistently without stopping, just like, fuck, or some other really racist thing or whatever. Just like,
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I remember.
Where's the mute button on this thing?
It kind of reminds me. I think at one point I got the what was called the Kinect for the Xbox. I want to say it was the 360 or the one right after that, where like it was kind of in the room. So I got tons of stuff like that wasn't the guy that was playing the game. It was just people in the background, like, you know, you're just like, that's not my baby. Like, you know, it's like what? Like, it's like, funny. I need more. Like, I need to know what happened. Like, yeah.
Oh man,
yeah, there was all sorts of drama going on in the background, you know, and that's something I noticed the other night. Like on FIFA, every now and then I would get into a game where someone had music going, and yeah, at times like it's annoying. Other times it's kind of a vibe. Like, you know,
yeah,
like
it depends. I think it all depends on the situation. Before too much, we've been about 20 minutes in, and I actually didn't hit the actual timer thing until we were a little bit into it already. But what else? Anything else on your mind that you wanted to get out before we jump into the Intellivision, Mattel Electronics Intellivision television?
You know, I think we've covered it. I could talk about art from now on, but you know, I think there's plenty of time for that later.
We might just have to have an ARC episode so you can get it out of your gamer system.
Yeah. You know, I think that's on my mind. I'm going to be away from the console for a couple days here, and then I want to see we're going to get started back on ARC. April 22nd is the wipe, I think, and. Yeah, excited for that. It's kind of on my mind as far as gaming goes right now, but
we've got a spot picked out. We've got a spot picked out on Extinction.
Extinction. I'm wondering, are we going to start there, like as initial like level ones, or we're going to go somewhere beachy and work our way up? I've only gone to I've only gone to Extinction to pick up some element, I think, a time or two, and maybe look for a snow owl at some point. But so is it got like a starter area on it? I'm not super familiar.
Well, if what the pros would do is they'd probably go to the island and focus only on leveling up. But man, I don't know. We don't want to get too deep into ARC right now because we're just gonna keep on coming back to that game we're obsessed with.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good time for us to jump into the main discussion.
More to come on that
introductory episode.
All right.
Look at this thing. It's beautiful. It's so retro. Dear listeners, if you happen to be close to a computer or your phone and you're not driving or something like that, take a look at this device, the Intellivision. It's like if you're into anything retro, you know, old school, you know, just that late 70s, 80s type of look. This thing is a beauty. Chuck, where do we begin, man? Where do we begin with this thing? It
Let's talk about that beauty, that wood grain right there.
That's what I was looking for. Wood grain.
Yeah, you got that wood grain floor model TV that your parents got there. Like, so you got to have that thing matches with it, right?
Yeah, it's dripping on fofos.
Yeah, like something. Like yeah, you got that gold and you got the wood grain. So I mean, that's money right there. And
yeah, and it looks like it has kind of like a chrome top. Like they've got they're trying to give it that robotic type of look, trim with the wood grain. And then we've got essentially a rectangular device, and Chuck, did you had one of these things, right? Your
do,
folks got you one back in the day.
Own it. Yeah.
Oh, you still have it?
Yeah, it's there at my parents' house. We're going to look for it this weekend. I'm going to be visiting my
Whip
mom.
it out.
So yeah, we'll see how the Intellivision has fared. I know when I last looked at it, it was just the box. So I'm wondering where the games might be in a separate location. But
wait, it was just an empty box, and the actual console is not in the box.
Yeah,
because that would
say, it wasn't.
That would mean you don't actually have one.
I had a pretty wicked baseball card collection, and like I want to say at some point my mom took over my closet for her second closet after I was an adult, and she put all my stuff up on a shelf, so you can't really look at it, unless you tear all those baseball cards down and that kind of thing.
It's got to be up in there. But what I wanted to ask you is since you've had one, like, because all I can look at are these cool pictures, and I see it's rectangular design, but I'm wondering, like, how big was this thing? Like, if you were to give the listener an idea, I mean, they may have already seen one, perhaps even have one. Who knows? But for any of us like myself that have just never
looking around my room here to compare something,
like a shoebox size, kind of bigger,
would probably
longer. Was it massive? I'm wondering if it was massive.
No, I would say something like maybe 2 feet long in the rectangular, and by 1 foot wide would be a good estimate. I think maybe just a little longer than 2 feet, like kind of like a double-sized laptop. I'm looking at my laptop, and I feel like I could probably set it down twice, and it's about that wide as a larger laptop.
Okay.
Might be.
Pretty
so
regular size.
And this thing usually ended up in the floor at my house, like in front of the old floor model TV, and it actually had as best as I remember, an RF connector. I think the 3 RCA jack kind of thing wasn't out yet, and most TVs didn't have that. So you basically rolled her right into the old cable. I'd go get a
that's crazy.
I would get a knife, like a butter knife out of Mom's drawer, and I'd go down there and take them screws up the back to where you had to hook it up. And because as I want to say, like our TV didn't even have like a place to put cable, so I had to have this adapter that I put like what looks like today's cable adapter into, and then I would have to take 2 screws and kind of connect that to the back of the TV, and I want to say you put it on channel 3, something like that.
Yeah,
there you went, man. It took off.
I remember those now. Yeah. I mean, when I was in that, before teens, early teens, that real growing up phase, and I was doing all my initial gaming, like my first gaming experiences. I remember seeing televisions with that. What is that called? RF?
I think so.
Yeah. But yeah, basically where there were some screws, and you'd have to wrap the wire around the screw and then tighten the screw, and then after that came, is it RCA? I think it is, where you have the 3 little cables, red, white, and yellow.
I want to say I've heard that called component or something like that, and then there was another one after that
was HDMI, right?
There was a time period there where you had where the RCA component one had 3 like red, white, and green. You had another like S component one that had 6 of those, and I want to say like one of the first Xboxes is where I first ever saw that. But
I remember the 6th one, but it was red, white, and yellow.
Okay, yeah,
and then I think. Gosh, I'm probably mistaken, but
that's funny.
It's all good. I think the yellow one was
ChukTomahawk is colorblind, as we all have had to discover. There's an episode.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, just like with the green drops in Ark.
Exactly.
Like, there's a yellow drop.
You're like, use the yellow kibble. I'm like, which one?
It's all good. Hey, no harm, no foul.
No, yeah. So I keep thinking about, though, I want to, like, in case Mom's listening, like, I'm sorry, Mom, that what I always did once I got it hooked up, I would typically I didn't take the knife and put it in the sink. Like, I put it right behind the TV.
For later?
I guess.
I might need this thing later on.
I can't be bothered with going back up to the kitchen. Like, I had to get into that game.
It's time to game.
Yeah. And then one day
Blaster.
Mom's like, why don't we have any knives? Like, yeah. So, that was kind of a fun thing to fit in there. But yeah, you know, like going back to the kind of the shape of this thing, like the controllers are connected to it. Like you've got one, like you don't have to buy a separate controller, which is nice. Like,
yeah, it was connected with one of those, sorry for interrupting, one of those Twizzly cables. I don't know the name
like
of that.
an old school phone cord. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like looks like a giant spring or something. And yeah, that thing's jammed in there, and you've got kind of a little spot for everything to set up there, and you've got the sort of the business end down here where the cartridge goes, and the cartridges are kind of little rectangles themselves with a sloped front end, no picture or anything like that on them, and it kind of just says the name of the game there. And
well, what's up with the controllers and these little? I'm looking at what appear to be little cards. They look like cards with pictures on them, and they slide into the controller because the controller essentially, if you can hop online and check out pictures of this, you'll see that these controllers were also rectangular, and they looked like essentially cell phones or smartphones, but they were wired into the actual the what they call the master component, I believe is the name of that box. So, for example, we have the Sony PlayStation. This would be the Mattel Intellivision master component. Kind of like, that's kind of the way I'm looking at it, at least. But anyways, so there's this controller, and then the controller has what looks like a regular phone type pad.
Yeah, with your 1, 2, 3, you know, the buttons just exactly like you would
just like a phone.
Saw them on a phone.
That's awesome.
And I think one thing to take note of here is how many buttons are on this controller compared to its competitor at the time, the Atari. Like, you had the joystick with one button. And like here, like not only do you have, what is that? There's 12 buttons on the keypad there. There's 1 through 9, and there's 3 more, or at least 2 more down there at the bottom. And then you've got buttons on the side as well. So you've got a lot of options there. I don't know that like the overlays like were beloved. Like I'd love to hear people's opinions on them. Like one thing that could happen, you could definitely lose them. Like as a 10-year-old kid,
well, yeah, real quick,
sure.
Because that's precisely what I wanted to get into, because we found this in some of the articles that we researched, and we'll probably go through some of these articles, but apparently these overlays were also designed to kind of, they were made specific to the game based on the buttons you would be using in that game. So the overlay would slide into the controller and kind of like block the buttons you won't be using, and only leave. Was that what they were doing?
It would, and it also would sort of assign something to the buttons that you would be using. And you know, I want to say like a game that people really liked, it was the baseball games. Like it kind of allowed you to sort of go to each player, you know, really quickly, and you know, just compared to its predecessor, it did open up a lot of options. Like I'm kind of looking at the football one right now, and it's kind of bringing back some memories of how, like, kind of without that and the instruction booklet, like you're lost. Like I've even watched, you know, folks getting out the emulator or whatever trying to play this, and like without that information, it is incredibly hard to figure out, and like you kind of just want to push buttons till a play is picked, and that just doesn't work. So yeah, you kind of needed these cards, and well, it could get jammed up. Like I think I remember some of mine getting kind of like torn on the sides, and from where, you know, I hadn't really carried them up real well, so then it would kind of be hard to get it jammed down in there.
Yeah,
and
that was a critique that I saw a bunch. Oh, sorry, I just hit the mic. Hope you didn't hear that. We haven't really. God, this is such a. I find this stuff so interesting. I love all things retro, and to be talking about this platform, this console, as our first episode is it's been really fun to like look at all this information from the, well, I guess it's fair to say late 70s. I mean, really, it started in 79 was when they released the first test, you know, version of this thing in the market in California. I think it was in Fresno in December of 1979. They also had the CES. I think it's the Consumer Electronics. Gosh, I don't remember what the last letters, but anyways, it was basically a convention, and they had that in '79 as well, and then they officially released it, I believe, in 1980. But go ahead.
And I want to say I probably got mine around 81, something like that. Being there in Tennessee at the time where I grew up, it took things a while to get there. I'm sure I somehow in my mind I feel like Baja and Tennessee are kind of on the same timeline as far as like when innovations would get there. So we were probably there in '79. I think I had the same company, Mattel Electronics, also made these handheld games that like we laugh about how bad these graphics are. Like it was literally like a blip on a screen that you were playing football with, and yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Real
So
quick,
but
I just want to tie back because I didn't. What I wanted to, because you mentioned this about the cards and the case that the games, the cartridge case that the games would come in, and the notes, and that that particular detail. Those details are exactly what come to mind for me when I think about the nostalgia in these platforms. As a gamer myself, that's a little bit older, is those experiences and those elements of the video game delivery experience are no longer. Not really. Now you buy the game online, you download it, and we're all pretty, we're gamers. We figure that we're basically hit and play, and we're figuring the game out quick. But back then, you'd go. I mean, you can definitely talk about this. I remember having the same experiences when I got my first gaming console, which, if I remember correctly, was like the first one that I got for me and my bro, I believe, was the Nintendo 64. And I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but we did a bunch of gaming on the older platforms. The first platform I ever touched and played on was the Nintendo, the first one. But the first gaming system that was ours that we went and got, that I think that Dad would allow us to get, because he wasn't into, he was all about us being outdoors, which I'm very grateful he was. But when we finally got that Nintendo 64, that was great. But before that, we had played the Nintendo and everything. So I also had that experience of going to the store, after saving up a bunch of money, or maybe it was a Christmas scenario. But there was always a scenario where you'd go to the store, buy the game. And it took a lot of effort to get that game. They were spendy back then, video games. Still are now, but when you were a little kid, and you'd get the box and you'd see the picture, and on the inside there'd be these notes and like what to expect kind of, and then there'd be in the case with the Intellivision, they gave you a full package, it looked like, and it really built up a lot of expectation before you'd get home and actually plug the game in, right?
Absolutely, and you had that tangible thing. I distinctly remember, just seeing that box. I think at that time a lot of my games came from a toy store in the mall. So I would go to the mall, and I want to say it was KB Toys or something like that. They had your Cabbage Patch Kids, all those video not just video games. They had any kind of game like in toys that kids like to play with, but they had this one section right behind the counter. These video games would be under lock and key back there, and they might even have a system set up somewhere that you could kind of maybe test out of a game or two. And just having that super excitement and getting that thing, kind of like you mentioned, this would also typically be a Christmas present, birthday present type scenario for me. But the games we might get just because like we had gone to the mall and had an opportunity to purchase those kind of things. And, I would have already kind of had in my mind, there wasn't a lot of ways to go research these games. You might see a commercial, or you might play it at your buddy's house or something. But, as far as like how we can go to YouTube today or kind of have all these different media outlets, you really just had to, sort of know what you liked and that kind of thing. And also rely on those boxes that you're talking about, looking at the back and I think after years of doing it, even as a kid, you learned that it wasn't going to be exactly as great as it said on the back of the box. Sometimes it was, but you know, they definitely like used a bit of dramatic license on the back of the box. Like,
oh yeah, man, the pictures were always just like, oh my gosh, look at this thing.
yeah, they would you know show that incredible moment, you know, in the game, maybe the boss fight or something like that really got your attention. But you know, maybe you get it home and it still is kind of dealing with 1980s graphics as far as being able to get things out there and represent things. But especially in cases like a movie that it came out, you know, I think one of the largest examples of this is the E.T. movie. I loved the E.T. movie. I was in love with Drew Barrymore. She was my little crush as a kid. Like, and so yeah, everyone loved the movie E.T., but boy, the video game gets a lot of venom.
Well, yeah, it was. It actually got. I saw this last night. I don't remember on what website it was. I also saw it. I heard it on another podcast, but it got an award for being the worst game of all time.
Like, yeah,
it did.
And, you know, and so you're going into that like with, you know, happiness, movie type happiness that you're expecting. Like, you know, it's like, I'm going to live this adventure that I love, that I just saw.
I thought E.T. was on Atari though, right?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't on the.
And as best as I remember this evolution is I had an Atari before I had an Intellivision, and somewhere in my mind the Intellivision came out after the Atari. But as I go back and research this, like it's pretty close. Like they were competitors of sorts, and I remember the Atari being just a tad bit cheaper. I don't necessarily know that for sure now, but I know I had higher expectations and felt like it was an improvement. Like you know, I kind of mentioned to you like how blocky the characters looked and everything on the Atari, but like you when I think of Intellivision, I think of this sort of little running man like icon that they use a lot sort of as a branding, and that was what made it so cool. That dude moved so much better. Like he looked so much more like you know, something that could do something rather than, you know, kind of the blocky, you know, I kind of shared with you a picture of the football game on Atari there where it's just like,
yep.
You know, in my memory, I remember moving everyone at once. Like as I kind of replayed it, maybe that's not exactly true, but I want to say like there was some limiting technology at the time. You could only have two different things moving at one time on a screen, or they had to use tricks to kind of make it appear that, you know, more than one thing was moving. But yeah, so yeah, a lot of advancement there. And, you know, in my opinion, if we did do a side-by-side comparison, it's not even close. Like I feel like the Intellivision was way better than the Atari, although I have some great memories of Atari, but not great memories of the E.T. game. Like it sure didn't live up to, you know, the expectation of what it showed on the box, or I think anyone's expectations really. Like I said, it gets brought up as kind of the worst video game of all time, possibly.
Let's talk about the actual device. Well, we have been talking about the device, I suppose, but when it was released, maybe we can get into some technical specifications for all of the more nerdy folk out there and want to know all the, like, well, what did this thing operate on? What was its graphics like? We were talking about how it was cabled. It was a RF, I think, is how you described it. So that's definitely old school.
Yeah, and I want to say that there's like that there was kind of an adapter we were talking about that made it go with the older TVs, and essentially I think as I was thinking about that, you're going in through the antenna port, which is interesting. But yeah, I'd like for folks to just kind of know why this is kind of an important console. I want to say, you know, one of the facts I saw out there, IGN, some of the folks I go to for like reviews, things like that. They in 2009, I think, ranked the Intellivision number 14 of all time as far as consoles go. And yeah, you know, it certainly has a lot of folks out there that a fan base of sorts. You know, I think I saw a statistic like from 1980 to 1983 that more than 3 million consoles were sold. I think the highest seller of all time was the PlayStation 2, and it's up in the 150 millions, 155, something like that. I think I saw. So, it's not to that level, but for the 80s there, a lot of consoles out there in folks' homes, and
yeah. Well, if I may, real quick, jump in just to give the listeners we'll give them just what is this thing? We'll give them the basic description of the Intellivision. I'm just gonna use a cheat code here from Google.
That's right.
Read off of Google.
Down, left, right.
The Intellivision was developed at Mattel in Hawthorne, California, along with the Mattel Electronics line of handheld electronic games. I think we mentioned earlier it was tested in Fresno in 1979, initially released in 1980. I want to give you some technical specs here. It says inside every Intellivision console is 4K of ROM, which I think, obviously it's not like 4K resolution, but I think they're just talking about like 4,000 kilobytes, right?
Right.
Of ROM.
Which, yeah, and I'm not
Containing
sure.
the exec software, it provides two benefits: reusable code that can effectively make a 4K cartridge an 8K game, and a software framework for new programmers to develop games more easily and quickly. That's interesting. It says here that the CPU was a GI-CP 1610, 1K RAM, 6K ROM, and it was a 16-bit game.
It was, I think
That's crazy.
It's a 16-bit microprocessor there. I saw something, maybe Sega claims to have the first true 16-bit, but yeah, kind of groundbreaking. I mean, we're like 2 generations before 16-bit is going to become, the standard. So
Fascinating.
yeah, they came in swinging. I think one of the thoughts was to expand this thing right from the very beginning and kind of make it sort of a one-stop shop of sorts for a computer video game system, that as that technology was kind of becoming more prevalent and sort of your upper middle class could afford it. It seems like they definitely came in big.
I think we were talking about this yesterday a little bit. What was the price of these things? I think, do you remember what it cost?
I want to say $150 in 1980 money. So,
150?
I want to say that's what I saw.
Interesting.
I'd have to double check that for sure, but, yeah.
I think I saw, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just want to give another shout out to Mom, for purchasing this for me when I was, around 10 years old. I think I was mowing a few yards for that maybe, but, I think it just converting that to today's money, you're looking at around $1,000.
Yeah, it says here, and this is from an article at techspot.com. It says it was the height of the second generation of console gaming when Mattel launched its Intellivision Master Component in 1979 for $275, which was a rather steep price for the time. Adjusted for inflation, $996.
Okay.
So that's a grand right there. And this article is from last year. So we could just call it a grand.
Yeah, I definitely remember it being, a pretty significant purchase. And when you really think, I want to say the games were around $30-$40. So that's not cheap either. So I think like sort of one of the selling points was, you can spend $10 on a board game that your kids are going to get one game for, or we're offering hundreds of games here and all these different possible endings that can come to them, and the fact that this is going to expand and we're going to have a computer component to it, a keyboard, were some of the selling points.
That's what I wanted to get at you with, ChukTomahawk.
Yeah.
About that. Keyboards, other components. Was that the 1979, 1980s version of what we now call add-ons? or DLC? No, that would be different. No, because that's software-based. But yeah, I wanted to jump
Expansion,
into that.
I guess, is the word I keep thinking of.
Yeah, but before we do that, sorry, I'm stuttering over here. Sorry, listeners. I know you don't want to hear that stuff. Before we get into the other components, which I find really cool, I'm excited to look into this. And I bet it was also a selling point. But I want you mentioned selling points earlier. And I think what made the Intellivision so successful, granted, I wasn't around at the time, but I want to hear your thoughts on this. I think what made it so successful, and one of the reasons why they were able to sell, I think it was 175,000 units out the gate in 1980. I'll double check that. I might be wrong, but I think that's the stat there. I think that success that they had initially had a lot to do with Mr. Intellivision. Do you want to tell? Do you want to bust open that?
Yeah.
With what's his name, Mr. Plimpton?
George Plimpton, yeah.
George Plimpton,
yeah.
Mr. Intellivision.
Well, you know, kind of how we talked earlier, like you weren't going online, obviously, to look at reviews of the console or anything like that, and we were all tuned into I want to say my TV had 13 channels around that time, and so
wow.
There was kind of a unifying thing to that, like we were all pretty much watching the same thing, so. And there's kind of like I think a calming sort of thing to that. Like you're doing what normal people do, almost like when, you're watching the evening news and it's something that everyone was talking about the next day. They had that common point of reference. And so within that, every now and then, especially on Saturday morning cartoon type time, there would be these commercials for these video game systems. And, they used this cat named George Plimpton that he just, my best way to describe him would be sort of a Renaissance man. He's kind of into a little bit of everything, and he had done these sort of gonzo journalism type things, like where he did like a thing about the NFL, and he actually went and like took a few snaps in a pregame, like he had access because he had a little bit of clout, as far as a writer goes.
Yeah, I heard. When you mentioned him the first time, I heard about this guy, and I looked into him, and he was one of the pioneers of what they call like new journalism or something like that, right? Where I think he was over in Europe for a little bit too, and he was part of an I was just doing some research. This guy had a lot of time over there in Europe, and but he eventually became a pioneer in this new journalism, where I guess he just was like saying basically, I'm going to report on this thing, but from the perspective of someone that's tried it.
And
that was his thing. Because he also played in a hockey game there, I heard, or in like a baseball snap or something. He was in some baseball, but the football one.
And it was
with the Detroit Lions, I think it was.
It was, and he did it like in a everyman kind of way, like that we all could relate to. Like it actually went fairly terrible when he did that in the NFL, but like it was what we expected. Like it showed us how good those athletes were, and it also kind of when I just remember my dad sitting there and we all criticized the game as if we could do better, but when you see what someone who's actually not an athlete gets out there and does, it kind of is sort of a frames thing, is like how they're supposed to be, like what you would expect kind of thing. But real good journalism. I think of Hunter S. Thompson, like he had something he called gonzo journalism. Like he reported on the Hells Angels, I think, at one point, and actually went and hung out with them, which is probably a questionable ideal.
¿Ustedes son los ángeles del diablo? No, wait, Hells Angels? Los Ángeles del Infierno. What am I talking about? I forgot to speak Spanish.
Yeah. Honestly, one of our common friends is a guy named Jack Danilchuk, and I think of him like almost as an example of this. Like he puts me in the mind of Hunter Thompson sometimes, and is one of the reasons I like him. But this George Plimpton, when I first saw this old commercial as we were doing this research, I thought, dang, that guy looks old then. He, is he still alive? How could he possibly be? And when I went back and looked at it, he was probably in his 50s or so, in the 80s there. And, just a trusted source. It was kind of like, an intelligent dude and an intelligent product, the Intellivision. Yeah, yeah.
So
It's an interesting angle. Like too. I want just to kind of sum up, like frame the fact that commercials were kind of our outlet to get information about this. They picked a really good guy that kind of came across as Mr. Intellivision, like you said. Like there's kind of this commercial this kid writes in and says that the Intellivision is more expensive than this other console. It's I think for the Intellivision 2 commercial, and it kind of put a face with the product that was a real good choice for branding, I feel like. And
yeah, it sounds like they were trying to kind of project a dominance, sophistication, superiority of the platform over the Atari. There was a clear, they weren't putting like, compared to our closest competitor or anything like that, like they do
called
today.
them right out.
No, they're like, no, here's this one. It sucks. Here's ours.
Yeah.
Look at the difference. And then they got Mr. Plimpton with his hands on both like televisions here in this image I'm looking at, with his face just going like, come on. It says here in the article, I don't want to lose the mic here, but it says, let me see, Atari versus Intellivision. What does it say?
The voice kind of goes with
hold on, let me bring the mic a little. I don't want to mess this up, but I can barely see the screen here. It's very small of me here. I'm going to try and emulate his voice. Oh, where is it? Where'd it go? Oh, let's see. It's a funny article. No, I lost it. Here it is. Atari versus Intellivision? Nothing I could say would be more persuasive than what your own eyes will tell you. But I can't resist telling you more. And then he's got two televisions under his hands, kind of. He's like resting his hands on them. And the Atari it isn't really anything close to the Intellivision's image.
Yeah, I just picture myself sitting there in the room with my dad, watching TV on a Saturday morning and just kind of looking over at him like, case closed. Like, I think, back in those days, kind of that industrial age ideal of getting a degree. And I think my dad had doctor, lawyer type aspirations for me. And, this console, in my estimation, was the way to get there. To be more like Mr. Plimpton there.
Yeah.
But,
getting back to the top of this is, I think he had a huge impact on the success of the game in the initial part. But then again, I don't know if we have the answer to this, but I don't know if he was involved in Intellivision at the beginning during its Fresno testing phase and the initial release, but.
Well, and the other thing to consider too is like to get a video game to you back in those days, like it had to kind of go through like a retailer like Sears or JCPenney, and so I'm sure there were ads like if I'm guessing, like I would say one of the other outlets or places I might have initially saw this would be in what was called the Wish Book. It's kind of like a Christmas catalog of sorts that I believe it was JCPenney that put out, and so it had a toy section, and there were like professionally photographed pictures of all these things, and
you can see them online, man. They're so cool. There's like a picture of an Intellivision, and then under it there's like the next handbag of the season, the handbags that they're selling. You'll see these purses or backpacks or whatever, and then there's the Intellivision.
Yeah, so back in the day, like you would get that wish book, and you would kind of circle things that you wanted, and I think it was kind of a generational thing. My mom, maybe had the Sears and Roebuck catalog that she would, kind of you just like, it was window shopping of sorts. Like you kind of pined over these
that was
things
Amazon Prime back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get that book and be like, oh man, look at this.
It's a wish book, and yeah, exactly. And I know like Star Wars figurines was a big thing that I was looking at in there. And you get over to that video game section and so JCPenney had its own commercials and models and things that they used in there. So I'm sure like there were some other things besides that, but I think primarily George Plimpton was on the commercials, like far as the TV commercial.
I watched a bunch of them, man.
Yeah.
There's this one where this little kid's on a bike and he's like rolling up on his bike and he's in his, it looks like a real nice little neighborhood, just a classic, suburban neighborhood type white picket fence type commercial scene, Yeah. And the little kid's on his bike and he's rolling up and he sees a guy getting out of the car and he's like, Mr. Intellivision? It's Plimpton. And then he just starts saying a bunch of stuff about that. I don't remember what he says exactly, but it was just like, oh man, look at this commercial, man. It's so old school, classic.
Well, I like how you pointed out the way they like. I feel like in today's commercials, like sometimes it happens. Like I'm thinking of Wendy's and Burger King kind of going at each other, but also like they just called out the Atari like by name, and I feel like there was a time period there where that didn't happen. Like maybe you could be sued if you use someone's trademark or something like that. But
yeah, well who knows, what their marketing team and all that and public relations, what they were planning and scheming. But the Atari did release a little bit before, and they were the first ones there. It seems like, at least they were certainly there before the Intellivision. And I think the owner, I don't remember his name. I was reading this last night. I mean, they wanted to get into this market because of the success of Atari. I would suspect. Because Atari kind of they cut that chunk of the market. They're like, gaming, baby, this is ours. Boom, here's the Atari 2600. I think at the time it was released as the VCS, later rebranded as the Atari 2600. And then they're like, shit, we got to bust out this Intellivision.
Yeah,
we got to get in on this. And they're like, and they went into based off what I was researching, they basically reached out to GI, I think, General Instruments or something like that, or General, I believe it's GI, and they kind of got the chip there and the hardware put together with those folks, and then made those testing runs in Fresno and so on and so forth, as we were discussing. But yeah, Plimpton, man, fundamental there, and all of their colorful pictures and ads and the books you're talking about. Reaching out to Sears, reaching out to Radio Shack, which may have actually been part of the downfall. We'll talk about that in a minute. But hey, I wanted to touch on, as I brought up earlier, what's up with these components, man? With these
I feel
like it makes it seem like they had a larger goal here with the Intellivision beyond gaming.
Absolutely. And there again, I can tie that back into Mr. Plimpton there, like kind of that, sophisticated, when you saw a picture of a kid sitting at a keyboard, working on something, it looked like he was, solving the world's problems. I think that's what my dad expected. I personally didn't have the keyboard component, but, and it's a huge thing. I think it's something that's interesting. Obviously they needed the space for the keyboard there, but it's big and blocky. It's almost as big as the initial Intellivision. But it is nice, that they are expanding it. I think that somewhat justifies that hefty price tag in the beginning. You're continuing to get bang for your buck. Obviously you're dropping some more coin to get these components, but you've got something that's going to expand with you into the future as gaming, moves forward. And, at this time, we don't know that there's going to be all these other generations of games. I think, maybe my parents thought this could just be a fad or something. Folks got into this a little bit and, like the hacky sack or something, and it eventually just goes away.
Yeah, gaming didn't.
No. We obviously, I think one significant event around this time that I think we'll talk about here that I'd like to is the crash of 1983 and sort of some of the things that led to that. But definitely want to kind of keep looking at the Intellivision here and some of the innovations that came with it and why it's significant. One of the things I found really interesting is that it was the first system that you actually could do downloadable content. They had something called the Play Cable. That
what's this? All the Play Cable?
Yeah,
Coming in with a curveball, ChukTomahawk. What's that?
Well, so the Play Cable was another thing that you could hook to this thing, and I assume this happened in big cities. I can assure you it didn't happen in Rogersville, Tennessee, but I'm imagining, maybe Atlanta would have been the closest place at that time. But like through your local cable system, you could actually you could subscribe to something, as I understood it, and you got downloadable games through there. And good Lord, how long they must have taken to download.
I gotta check that out. Yeah,
and that's in 1981. Like, so, I mean, we're laying the groundwork for, the fact we were just talking about, like, when, I just bought that FIFA game. I didn't go buy a game. Like, I went to the PlayStation store and, like, it was downloaded in 30, 40 minutes, and I had the whole game.
You can download games in 30 or 40 minutes, man. Damn.
It did the other
that
day.
Internet connection you have, man. Down here, the internet is a little slow where I live.
They make
Lucky dog.
They'll divide it into two. Like, they'll make it like so you can go ahead and start playing, like, even during the download. So maybe that's what I mean is like I was playing, as far as the full game. It takes a little longer, but the Play Cable, like incredibly innovative for the time, and I've heard this mentioned as like part of like where they went too far, like maybe one of the things that led to the crash, like just saturation of the market kind of thing, but also like I think we should take note of just how innovative that was, and like just unheard of, if you like we just were talking about me back there with a butter knife connecting to the TV, like, so the thought of like those video games coming through the wires back then, like, is just mind-blowing. And
oh man, I know it. Yeah, it really is. It's cool stuff. All right, but okay, we got the keyboard component. It's pretty self-explanatory there. What about this Intellivoice? I'm looking at another device here. It looks like it kind of real quick. It looks like it I might be wrong, but it looks like it plugs into the side of the master component. It says in 1982, Mattel introduced the Intellivoice voice synthesis module, a speech synthesizer for compatible cartridges. The Intellivoice is novel in two respects: human-sounding male and female voices with distinct accents, and the speech-supporting games were designed with speech being an integral part of the gameplay. Oh, ChukTomahawk, this is what you were talking about
Exactly.
the dude in B8 and the B-17 bomber game, right?
Yeah.
The robotic hillbilly or something like that?
It was like, Mattel Electronics presents, and he was like, B-17 bomber, and like, so frame this for the time, like think about the I think a great exercise to teach this would like how significant of an improvement this is, because it kind of seems like nothing when we think about today's games, but go play the initial baseball game on Atari. Like, whenever you struck out, it made this noise like like it's known like as like the most annoying part of that game. Like, they could not make the game say strike or you're out or whatever. So you would get these. I went back and looked at that Dungeons and Dragons game. Like it wasn't Intel. Like only certain games were compatible with the Intellivoice, but like that Dungeons and Dragons game. Like, whenever you're getting, like, one of the characters is giving you the business or whatever, like, killing you or whatever, it's just like, instead of like a real, like, sound of a sword or a dragon, like, or something, they really didn't have a lot to work with there. So this was groundbreaking. Like the Intellivision already, like, without this, like, was ahead of it. Like when you played the baseball game, it said you're out, like, instead of that weird noise. And so it was already up there, but once they added this Intellivoice thing and you had accents, it just brought it to life. And like, was another selling point to bring my parents in. Like your parents hear that from the other room, and they're like, "What are you doing down there, boy?" And
Nothing. Leave me alone, nothing.
Yeah, I'm flying over Europe. I got to save the Allies. It's like coming into an anti-aircraft battery. Yeah, I mean, and like you go back and like I don't know the history of flight simulators, but it had a rudimentary flight simulator. That's kind of showing your speed and kind of the gyroscope view of sorts there that we see in flight simulators today that are obviously more advanced. But
100%.
Once you jammed that IntelliVoice in there and you got that B-17 bomber, which I remember being one of the first like compatible cartridges with that thing, and like you were off to the races, man. I mean, it made it so much more entertaining. And I want to say like I can't remember exactly what had to be done, but there was a way like with this to kind of hook a synthesizer up and kind of was one of the groundbreaking things. Like it was one of the first that you could make music with. There was actually a program that you could make music with. And, I think that's something that like DJs look for today, like really rare samples and things. And I'm sure that's a source for them.
There's certainly got to be a connection.
Yeah,
because they're all electronics at the end of the day, and I think the turn of the 70s to 80s there is when that whole scene was going on too. The synthesizers coming out of Europe and the UK.
Yeah.
That new wave genre of music. Wave. People start figuring out where we got the inspiration for the name.
That's right.
But so there, and then also with the DJ rap hip hop scene that was coming out in those times, I'm sure there was a connection with synthesizers and the music scene and with gaming and all that. I mean, not a direct connection, but there was certainly a tech related connection.
Boy,
Anyways.
that 80s styling, I think, what does the kids say these days? Drip. Like those really thin ties, like were one thing. And I remember I had this members only jacket. Like that was the jam back then, man. It was kind of like it had these,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's really comical to go back and look. What the styling, a lot of fluorescent colors and things. So it's interesting you mentioned that. Like,
man, if I could go back in time as like and be in my like, I guess like mid or late 20s, even like early 30s, like even at the age I have now, but to be like in the 80s, like maybe in San Diego or Miami or any of those cool like scene or like just experience that'd be awesome, and then come back, of course.
Yeah,
because I got to play Ark.
I'd like to play that game of what would if I could take one of our like our Ark game and show it to 1981 me, which would have been around 10 years old. Wow.
Oh man.
Yeah, I think
I don't know how that would have turned out.
It'd be tough to go back and play with the blocky looking characters there after that. But
yeah, we look at the who's the owner of Wildcard. This guy looks just like you. Like, wait a minute.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I'd take that ideal and run with it, I'm sure. It's certainly a sort of revered age of innocence. I feel like that I'd love to visit again.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna in upcoming episodes we're gonna keep talking about all of this stuff that takes us back, and we're hoping it takes you back too, listeners. Or if you've never played any of these things, we'll hope it'll spark interest, and you'll enjoy that. But let's keep going. It looks like the next kind of like milestone for Intellivision was the Intellivision 2. Reading from the article, the Intellivision 2 redesign was much smaller and cheaper to manufacture than the original. In the spring of 1983, Mattel introduced the Intellivision 2, a cheaper, more compact redesign of the original that was designed to be less expensive to manufacture and service. With updated styling, it also had longer controller cords. I don't have any images right now available, but
yeah,
I think I remember seeing
smaller.
it. It was
a little
thinner.
smaller, kind of gray, we left the wood grain behind, sadly. But
man, never leave the wood grain behind.
It looks more like I kind of remember. I think my mom was working in an office at that time. It kind of reminded me of the housing on her typewriter, her Smith Corona, I think it was at the time, or something like that. That sort of gray housing that we see eventually be utilized by the Nintendo there in 1985. But I think the thought here was, there's something interesting that I wonder if our listeners have heard of, and you as well, is something called Moore's Law. Where I want to say this cat, Richard Moore is maybe his name. He didn't necessarily set out to make a law, but he stated that the amount of computing power would double every 2 years, like the amount of things they could get on a semiconductor, and that's held true like since he said that, which I think was in maybe the 60s, 50s, something like that. Like it goes way back, and it's held true like up into this age, and I think we're approaching that moment where they can't get anything more, and I think one of the limiting factors is heat. We see all the fans and things like ultimately just the amount of heat created. So I think, here's Moore's Law, like taking place, like 2 years have gone by, and, spring of 1983. So, from 79, like computing power and RAM, the price of RAM has gone down enough that they can make this thing cheaper. And, when you think about comparatively, like we're almost up to $1,000, like it probably needed to be a little cheaper. Because
$1,000. I mean, considering inflation,
that's a big old purchase.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean,
it
right now, just for context,
Christmas.
I mean, I want to get the PS5 because they're available right now in Mexico, but I'm still I'm not in a rush enough to grab that thing because it's pretty spendy, and I think and I think it has to do with the availability of the PS5 with the scalping and all that stuff, which I don't know a whole bunch about. I know the basics of it, but if that's still going on, then, but looking at that price, I think it's going for like 13,000 pesos, like 13,000 pesos or something, which is around $650. It's like, I'm going to wait a little bit. So to think $1,000,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying? I don't know. So
I
it
can
makes
think
sense.
of a funny situation around this. I remember once I was spending the night with my cousins, and maybe there's a place called Gatlinburg, not too far from where we grew up. It's kind of a tourist destination. I think that's where Dollywood is today and whatnot. And so my uncle took me and my cousins, his 3 sons, on this trip, and I want to say it came this like week-long rain deluge or whatever, and we were all trapped in this sort of rental condo there in Gatlinburg, like driving him insane that he actually purchased us a video game system just so that we would have something to do and get out of his hair. And I remember thinking, like how, like we had broke him essentially just from, being little kids up in his business, I guess. And, once he had that system, like we were all in the back bedroom there, like from then on, he didn't have another problem out of us. So,
I'm looking at it here with the Intellivision 2. I finally found a picture of it. It looks pretty similar. It just looks a little shorter, really.
Yeah, kind of smaller and
without
cheaper.
the wood grain.
And honestly, until
$99 it retailed.
Until we did this research, I don't remember that. And it's odd too, like how we think of say going from PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2, like we do look for backwards compatibility, but the Intellivision 2 essentially was just the Intellivision 1. Like it was cheaper. It played the same game. So it wasn't like, you had Intellivision 2 games and it was backwards compatible. You just had the same game. So really in my, little world or whatever, there was no reason to have one.
Yeah, it says remastered. That's probably why this article has the title remastered above it. It says that, there wasn't much to it beyond a remastering, perhaps. It says the controllers were removable through joystick ports, facilitating easier repair, longer cords so players aren't quite so tightly tethered to the console. An LED light is placed next to the power button. Power button is now dual mode. So just like some, advancements really, but it looks like that was pretty much it.
It wasn't a huge leap, but and when you consider the money, like it just, in my world, it probably wasn't worth it. I think, you know, if it was going to do the same thing as the one I already had, and you know, I think it's interesting, like the longer controller cords. I you know, as I'm sitting here in my nice gaming chair right now, like I think of like back in those days, I was in the floor in front of the TV, laying on my stomach, like playing the video game. So yeah, that would have been nice if there was a cable long enough to reach to the couch that we could actually have, you know, sat in a seat and played this game. But yeah, not a ton of innovation, and you know, it seemed like honestly, like we're almost, in my opinion, kind of looking at the heyday of the Intellivision right there. Like you know, it's obviously doing well, but we're about to move into that sort of 1983 crash, and I think it'd be interesting to kind of talk about that, like kind of.
We will. Before we do that, I want to backtrack real quick and go back to what you mentioned about the play cable. I found an article on the doteaters.com. And in the article, they have a section called Downstream, and it's just about that. Let me read this real quick because it is fascinating, considering the time. Yeah. Considering when this was. Yeah. Also developed for the Intellivision is Play Cable, a joint venture between Mattel and the Play Cable Company. Introduced in 1981, it offers a 24-hour gaming service to customers via their local TV cable outlet. That is crazy. For $12 a month, a rotating schedule of 15 games is made available to subscribers who receive the general instrument manufactured play cable adapter box for their cable company and plug into their cartridge slot of their master component. There's a little bit more there, but that's the gist of it. That's so cool.
Yeah. And, you know, I feel like... I don't know that we had cable anyway. Like it probably existed. Like I remember, you know, when cable came into the house and we had our first HBO channel, you know, and so yeah, at this time I don't even know that there was cable available, you know, where I lived. But like say in bigger cities, I think this was going down in 1981, and wow, how cool would that have been?
Yeah. Well. All right, so what else? I think the next, you know, before we get into where Intellivision is these days, there's that little transitional period post-1983 video game crash up until when they decided to start making the new Intellivision Amico. But there was a little interim there, I think, which has to do with the video game crash that you were discussing. I don't know the details on that too much. I don't want to get too deep into that because I don't have that much data on it. But what was that all about? To the best of your recollection.
I feel like you know, as we've mentioned before, Mattel was in the toy business, and they had made those handheld games, like those comically simple football games and baseball games. I was talking about, and
they made
Barbie's Dream House.
They killed it with Barbie. Man,
of course, yeah,
they killed it with Barbie.
You know, so you've got not necessarily gamers making the decisions on this. Like you've got you know, CEOs at Mattel that you know, have got a bottom line to uphold, and stock investors and things like that. So I think they. As best as I remember, like sort of saw the writing on the wall. You know, once the crash had happened there, like sort of a you know, retail glut of sorts, and you know, took a totally different direction and sold out in 1984 to something called the INTV Corp, which produced its own Intellivision and the INTV System 3, which I never heard of as a kid.
Oh, I see what happened here. And okay, let me jump in before we get into that. And thanks again, by the way, for sharing that outline, because I just noticed that you have a little description here that you included in the outline about the video game crash, which I love. You know, I know it was a tough time for the gaming industry, but I love the nickname, you know, in retrospect, the Atari Shock. I love that. It says, the video game crash of 1983, known as the Atari Shock in Japan, was a large-scale recession in the video game industry that occurred from 1983 to 1985, primarily in the United States. The crash was attributed to several factors, including market saturation and the number of game consoles and available games. many of which were of poor quality, as well as wanting interest in gaming consoles as well as waning interest in gaming consoles in favor of personal computers. So people were kind of moving towards PCs. Even back then, it looks like home video game revenues peaked at $3.2 billion in 1983, then fell to around $100 million by 1985. Holy smokes! A drop of almost 97%. Damn.
And you saw, like, when we converted
that's
like 80s dollars, like 275 came out to 1,000 a minute ago. So I mean, you're talking multi-billions, like tens of billions of dollars industry here that
and someone
in
took it
dollars.
right in the,
Well, and I think one thing that, like, honestly, until like I researched this or whatever, like, I think of me in 1983, like this didn't really affect the consumer. Like, actually, in some ways, it was good for the consumer because, like, suddenly you saw these games like the price go down, like in bargain bins and things like that. But
if you had that Intellivision, if you had that $1,000 piece of equipment sitting at home.
But all of a sudden, like for the gaming industry, I think they had saw this incredible gains, and they were predicting like a 50% gain for the next year, and like there was just a little blip, like maybe it was going to be more like a 10% gain, but a steady gain. And once this information got to Wall Street, suddenly like the Atari stock went down, and it kind of started a domino effect that led to sort of a I've heard, kind of done a little bit of research and saw a lot of different opinions on why it happened. But, I think human greed really is the underlying thing. Like everybody saw that this was going on and wanted to get a piece of it. So you had like, I think even Purina Dog Food put out a game at one point, and like, it just, everybody was jumping into the market. You also had your initial, like how, like today when you buy a video game, like an Xbox game, it's going to say Xbox up on the top. And that was kind of the case in the beginning. But once independent developers got in there and Atari lost like the control over the games, like they kind of lost, the market got flooded and poor quality. You had clones of games. And
that's with Atari? Yeah, because
it did happen.
Because I know with the Intellivision, they sold licensing to Sears and Radio Shack.
Yeah.
And what was the name of the
one?
And then the video game system or something from Sears was there. And from what I read, that kind of had that had an impact as well on the undoing of Intellivision.
I agree. And people mention, like one of the things I think it mentioned there in that article was about how like the number of consoles was confusing to people. But if you really think about it, we have more consoles than that today, and people aren't confused. And also, like I mentioned, like we often joke on my growing up there in the South or whatever, it took like 10 years for innovations to get here. Like the world could end and we'd have 10 more years. Because it take that time to get here, like so it took.
Well,
forever.
I got to be protected in that way too down here where I'm at.
Absolutely, I think that's it's one of the things that we share. Like it's very similar. Like so, you gotta adapt. Like you gotta figure out some way to make it work. And whenever. These new consoles, like the more obscure ones that you hear coming out, like that news just didn't get to East Tennessee, and especially like I'm sure old mom and dad weren't, after they'd already purchased this $275 Intellivision, they weren't hearing nothing else. I'd already sold them on the fact that it was going to be, the only gaming system that we needed.
Oh yeah, you'd already putting all your
eggs in that basket.
In the basket, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like you go over your cousin's house and play some Odyssey 2 or whatever, and that's where you're going to be playing it. Is what my dad would say.
I could see you come back saying, "So, Dad, there's this thing called the IntelliVoice."
Yeah.
And turns out,
yeah,
we need to get that.
yeah, exactly. You know, it's like, you want me to be a musician, right? So yeah, you know, I don't think like the confusion about the number of consoles like really played into it that much, especially like if you were kind of a household that wasn't going to be buying two anyway.
Money matters, man. It was money matters. They made it. They probably thought it was a good call. But it turned out to be a bad call, because if there was a price variance at all, and then if I have an Intellivision in front of me, and then a Tandyvision from Radio Shack, and then the Sears version, which I don't remember the name off the top of my head, and I know that they're all the same, and I'm just speculating, because again, I wasn't there back then, and I haven't done that much research. But you know, if they're all sitting there in front of me, I know they're the same, and they have for the most part the same game choices, maybe fewer, more, less, depending. But there's a price difference. Like if the I'm just speculating again, if the Radio Shack one was $100 cheaper or $50 cheaper or $20 cheaper than the other version, I'm going to go for that Radio Shack version. And then the other two companies are taking a hit right there.
Yeah, you know, they're almost like they didn't hold on to their like creative properties in some ways.
I feel like Intellivision was thinking for a short time horizon profitability instead of long time horizon consistent profitability.
We have the luxury of knowing that the gaming industry is going to go on, like and there's going to be these generations of consoles. But like I think in like the Mattel CEO's mind at that time, like this could be a fad, and like it just go away. And so they they see Christmas coming, and they know, as we've mentioned, kind of the middle class is going to make these larger purchases around that time, and they just sort of threw quality out the window at times. Like I heard, like the Pac-Man is often cited as one of the worst games too that came to Atari.
Yeah, I saw the comparisons.
The and like the story goes is that the guy that made that game, like he turned in a prototype. Like the game that we got was the prototype. Like they actually saw like Christmas is coming, so you put this thing on out there, and that really wasn't his intent. And
yeah, I heard a podcast on that with all the details.
Yeah, so
he was bummed.
I think of it though, like I remember going to the arcade back then and playing the regular Pac-Man. I don't think anywhere in my mind like I expected the one I had at home on my TV to be that good. Like so it doesn't like have the same impact, I guess. Like I expected it was going to be like a little bit of a downplay, but when you do compare it though, like I looked at some comparisons of like Donkey Kong on Atari and Donkey Kong on the Intellivision, and they both kind of have their strong points, but you can just see like a lack of attention to quality that maybe was lining the pockets of investors, but wasn't necessarily the greatest thing for kind of the quality of the video games at the time. So yeah, that I do feel like there's like you're mentioning, there's sort of that time period from 1984 to 1990 there. So when I think like Intellivision had sold out to INTV, like which I said I'd never heard of, and
they, there were moves were made, if you will.
Yeah, they started this Tudor Vision. There's another example of, back in the day, you didn't have the old like Google machine to go to there. You had the World Book Encyclopedia. Yeah, and, these people would come door to door, and they sold. Like we had a copy of these encyclopedias at my house, and they're actually still in the
I remember
bookcases.
those.
Yeah. So at some point in 1989, I think it was, the Intellivision started working on something called the Tudor Vision that was kind of going to be an educational video game system that they had teamed up with World Book. And honestly, as we look at these things, like the INTV, the Tudor Vision, like they kind of follow a pattern of some sort of where these things like kind of get enough traction to get some development, but they don't ever really like reach the heights that the original Intellivision had reached, and they maybe don't even come to market.
Yeah, it seems like they're just kind of making grasps.
Yeah, like
they're just trying to find something where they can make some quick dough, maybe. I mean, that's kind of what it feels like to me, at least.
Well, and I feel like, the counterpoint to that is that, there's an interest. There's people that grew up with these things that recognize this as a sort of reminder of a fun time in their life, or an experience they shared with their friends, and so there is some some juice there to get these things done. But as far as like what it costs to make it, and what's going on in the world. I saw this quote from I think it's Ralph Waldo Emerson, where he said that the gist of it is that it's important to invest in ideals rather than circumstances, and obviously the world circumstances right at that time was a crash for the video game industry, but as the idea of what this thing represented at a game that you bonded with your friends, like
the spirit of it.
You competed together, and that idea was still there, and I think that's what drove a lot of these innovations, and what had them try these things that maybe didn't make it to market. But it looks like around maybe 1998, like they kind of started cashing in a little bit on. As far as like old games were made available for PC and current consoles, like you had I think a PlayStation game that you could get called Intellivision Lives.
Yep, that's right. And they made deals with a lot of the larger names.
Yeah,
including Nintendo, PlayStation. I think there's some PC.
And we've seen other games kind of do this and have some success at it, and I think that. That's still there. I think at one point they did maybe in the 2000s there somewhere, they did something called the Intellivision Flashback, which was kind of a mini console that sold for around $60 that made a profit. And so that kind of led, I think there was 2018, Tommy Tallarico
but before we get into that, because we're about to, I know you're heading towards the end of the Amico, and that's going to be the last block of this here, our first introductory episode. But before we go into the last block, wrapping up the OG master component, I want to, oh shoot, I hope you didn't hear that. My stomach's roaring, man. We've been going at it here for, with our dear listeners, for about an hour and a half. It's been a good introductory episode so far. But yeah, before we go into our final block and we talk about where things are at now, and our boy Tommy Tallarico, which is that how you pronounce his last name?
I don't know if it's how he does.
If it was Spanish, it'd be Tallarico.
Tallarico.
And that could be, I don't know, Tallarico. I'm sure
if it was East Tennessean, it would be Tallarico.
I just want to look at some of the notes you left here, which again, thank you for putting this together. Wrapping up on this awesome master component, what were the innovations of the Intellivision? It is to be considered the first 16-bit game console, coming 10 years before the Sega Genesis came out with their 16-bit deal. 16-bit microprocessor. It was the first home console and one of the first video games to use a tile-based playfield that allowed for the display of detailed graphics and color with very little RAM. The Intellivision was also the first system to feature downloadable games with play cable in 1981. ChukTomahawk. That was the fact of the episode. That was hold on real quick before you I want to just get through this list. I know you want to jump into the next segment. Yeah. Intellivision was the first game console to provide real-time human voices. That's another factoid of the episode. In the middle of gameplay, courtesy of the IntelliVoice module. It was the first game controller with a directional thumb pad. The Intellivision was also the first game console or home computer to offer a musical synthesizer keyboard. Very cool stuff. Thanks again for that, by the way, that little list of factoids.
A couple takeaways. Would love to talk to someone that actually experienced, that lived in a bigger city and got to experience play cable. And I think that would be an interesting topic at some point. For anyone that has information about that to share with us. But also, as you mentioned, the directional thumb pad, I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about this, because if there are folks that have bad memories of this system, it's going to be about that thumb pad, because it was a big difference, like versus your kind of joystick situation with one button that you had going on the Atari at the time. And there were some games like especially like when you go from, say going straight down to straight up, like there's no, like on today's D-pad, like that's kind of like obvious and sort of facilitated a little more. Like there's a little more of a break, like you feel it when nothing is happening and you feel it break over. But like this, especially as I remember it, was very sensitive to that, and kind of, I remember like you would kind of keep your thumb on it, like, so when you rolled from going down to rolling to going up, like there was a moment where you were giving an input to go right, like so I saw people like kind
struggle with that.
And people that don't like it, especially, you know, when you're going into that learning curve and you've been doing well on Donkey Kong on Atari and now you're over here playing on Intellivision and you suck, like, you know, you gotta fight through that. And you've seen me struggle with like trying to go from controller to, you know, PC, like playing Warzone on PC, and like, you know, it's a tough thing to accept. Like, I've got to be worse for a while before I get better. And so that was a downfall for a lot of people. And you know, as much as it was like a revolutionary and kind of led us into the directional pad that we see on our PlayStation controllers and whatnot today, like it also is kind of a hated part of it for a lot of folks. And I feel like I was somewhere in the middle. Like it was annoying at first, but I kind of learned it. And one of the neat consequences of that was when my buddies came over that didn't have that system and they had to experience that learning curve while we were playing football, like they were going to take a whooping. Like,
yeah, come on over, boys. No, I got hot pockets.
Yeah,
you just come on over.
Like, no, it's just like the Atari. You've played this before, right? Like,
button here, button there.
Yeah. So,
yeah, I can see you already telling. You can sit closer to the TV if you want. You think it'll help?
You know my personality. Like, I didn't tell them. Like I didn't help them. I'm sure. Like, especially my cousins. But yeah. So that directional pad, like, although it was an innovation, it had its limitations. And I remember specifically auto racing being really jacked up. I think they were trying to emulate like what it was like to drive. Like if you actually watch a Formula One race, they don't hold their hand up on the top of the wheel like the 10 and 2 position we think of. They hold it from the bottom, and they tried to emulate that. So actually to go left, you had to be on the bottom of that disc and kind of go left where it was kind of counterintuitive.
I see. I know where you're coming from.
Yeah. So yeah, that was some struggles with that, but yeah, I think it's good that you know, we kind of revisit those innovations. And you know, I think before we move on, I do want to, like, I think that video game crash is interesting because, you know, I think of the stories like kind of what went on with GameStop there, you know, in the last couple of years, kind of with investors and whatnot. And you know, I even heard, like, you know, this is kind of an example of the video game community kind of standing up for a brand. Like, you know, I don't know how folks feel about GameStop out there. I kind of have, you know, love-hate relationship in some ways with it, I guess. Like, I'm not super happy with like what they give me for used games, but I've also bought a lot of things there, and you know, found a lot of things that I like there too. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, what do you say? Should we get into the final block of this episode? Before we do, and I might cut this out. I'm thinking about it, but ChukTomahawk, I got to go to the baño, man.
All right.
Discharge.
Do it to it.
Be right back.
All right. I'm going to grab some coffee while you're doing it.
All right.
Yeah. I was just thinking some of the, there needs to be like a Facebook thing that says Mark safe from the video game crash of 1983. or maybe I could get myself a t-shirt that says I survived the video game crash.
I'd have to get one that says I wasn't quite born just yet, but I would have survived. You know?
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. I mean, the game, the console was very successful. I mean, it did well at the beginning. It left its mark for a reason. I mean, things kind of fell apart quickly, it seems like, but the initial release, the initial year or two of the master component, the original one,
3 million
You know?
copies, like 3 million units sold. Yeah, that's
know?
putting it out there for sure.
I would have been all over that B-17 bomber, man.
It honestly, it's one
I
of
would
my
have been
absolute
all
favorites.
over that.
Yeah, we need to play that on an emulator sometime. And also, like I think maybe that's a segue to our next topic. Is I hear there's a new version of the B-17 bomber.
Oh, right on. But I just thought of another thing, and I think we would be remiss of not mentioning this too. But you wouldn't happen to have a list of the top selling games back then, would you? Is that something we could bring up real quick? Could we use a cheat code?
Like as far as for the Intellivision?
Yeah, what were the top selling games for the Intellivision? Let's use a cheat code and figure that out real quick.
Yeah, let's see that real quick.
Because I'm sure the listeners are going like, yeah, but what?
I think a quick answer to that question is, what did it come with? I do.
Oh no, I think we should let's so that we can move on to the next block and not chew up too much of our folks' time. I just want to know like what the top 5 bestsellers were, and then we can move on to the Amico.
All right.
Best selling. Let's see here. I'm gonna go right to the top 5 here. This is according to Retro Dodo.
We're going to give him respect right away.
Retro Dodo. Oh yeah,
Dodo
we're taming dodos on the ark all the time.
We know where he's coming from.
We've got Dig Dug, 1982.
Arcade classic, really fun. Going through tunnels and blowing up, like you hook this little pump to these things.
Little pump.
Yeah, you pump them up and blow them up.
All right, we've got number 4, Tron, Deadly Discs, 1982.
Oh my God. Another link to a movie. Man, great movie. Video game oriented movie even. And boy, howdy, what a fun game.
All right. Coming in at number 3, Burger Time, 1983.
Another arcade classic. Yeah, it's kind of like Donkey Kong meets hamburgers. Two things good. I loved in 1980.
Ooh, this one. And today. This is funny here. Very retro picture, game art. Number 2, Beam Rider, 1983. Man, we should have named our podcast Beam Rider. I don't know though. It could go a couple of different ways. And I'm not surprised at the number 1 spot, according to the retrododo.com top Intellivision games. Number 1, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, 1982.
It was a classic. Man, you're going through these tunnels that like they don't render until you are right on them, and like you see that snake on the cover there, that sucker is on you, and it starts making this noise like, and like you want to get away from it so bad. And you had like a bow. Obviously, you can see the guy on the cover there, and you were constantly finding these quivers that you re-upped with the arrows and working your way through this map to get over to the dragon. Mm-hmm. And it got harder and harder as you went. And at Dungeons and Dragons, like I never played. Did you ever play the board game at all? Like with
I
friends,
didn't.
Like where you roll the dice?
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't.
Yeah, me neither. It just. There wasn't really a community to do that, where I grew up there. But I like the ideal of it, and obviously we see that in a lot of games. But yeah, as I'm kind of fanning through that list there, there's a lot of recognizable sort of titles. But I think this is kind of a personal thing for everyone. Like I know what my favorites were, and like the ones that really made a lasting impact on me. That B-17 bomber looks like it came in 14th or something like that. That's way up there. That when we first thought of this, talking about this, like that game came to my mind. Like as far as one of the best that I'd ever played, up into that time. So,
yep.
Yeah, a lot of interesting titles out there.
A lot of interesting titles. Man, some of these, I'm looking at all the art, and man, I just love the retro game art, to be honest. I love it.
I think it's very interesting how these memories are kind of, in there for me. And until you see something, like you don't really, you're not thinking about that. But,
yeah. Well, if I may, let's jump right into this. It says in May 2018, and this is, again, coming from the TechSpot article that I was reading from earlier. In May 2018, a longtime video game music veteran, Tommy Tallarico, announced that he had acquired the brand and formed Intellivision Entertainment. In October, Tallarico unveiled the Intellivision Amico, a next-gen version of the beloved console. Make no mistake, the Amico is not looking to compete with the likes of the PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X, but it does have some appeal, the article states. I'm gonna continue reading this just because it goes right into the specs, which I know everyone loves to hear the specs. I love to hear the specs, even though I don't understand all of them. I understand the most of them. It says the Amico is a retro gaming system at heart, however, with modern hardware, including an 8-core, 1.8 gigahertz Snapdragon SoC, 2 gigabyte RAM, which is not very much, of course. 32 gigabyte storage with micro SD expansion and 1080p HDMI. It is far more capable than the older master component. It has a slick, reimagined design in a smaller form factor with arguably unnecessary but cool LED lighting. The controllers harken back to the originals, but the disc pad is way more advanced, and designers replace the physical number pad with an LED screen. This is, again, coming from the TechSpot article.
Yeah. My first reaction was like super excitement. Obviously this Tommy Tallarico is respected in the industry, and especially in like sound innovations, and him jumping on board there in 2018, and kind of announcing this thing, I think got a lot of folks excited. But where's this going?
Where is it going, man?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is like a whole other block to unpack here. And I think it starts with what you say, that excitement, that nostalgia of retro games. Let's read from the article. Let me read from the article a bit more here. The games revealed so far are retro in style, but not in substance. Many of the classic Intellivision classics that I knew and loved, this is the writer of the article speaking, like Astro Smash, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, now called Cloudy Mountain, Biplanes, and even Missile Command, are being brought back with gorgeous new coats of paint and updated gameplay mechanics. Mm-hmm. So, we're looking at a retro feel, but maybe more smooth gameplay. That issue that you were just talking about with the wheel or touchpad thing. The wheel spinner type of deal. Those issues, obviously,
still exist.
Well, I don't know. It sounds like they may have ironed that out.
I think people are and I think now we're getting at like where we had that number pad. People are starting to like now there's an actual touch screen, and folks had some questions about that, and I think we're still using the D-pad like disc there, but obviously some improvements, and I guess as I'm looking at this and kind of watched a little bit of video of gameplay and whatnot, I think that describes it. Like you've still got like sort of a side-scrolling game, but in today's graphics, like you can actually make a side-scrolling game that looks like there's almost an open world that you can explore, which kind of gives you a way greater perspective than the side-scrolling games used to have.
I think it would be, sorry for interjecting that, but I think it would be great too for there just to be one platform where the gaming community, if they're interested, if they're into it, they know where they can go to get their retro gaming.
Yeah.
Instead of kind of figuring out, should I download an emulator? Should I get it on my phone? Because part of that, not to backtrack to the last block, but part of that Intellivision Lives was, I think they even did a deal with Nextel. If you remember Nextel, back in 2002, I saw it in a Wired article I read last night from 2002 in Wired.com, where they had made a deal with Nextel, the the chirping phone that I don't think they exist anymore. I had a Nextel back in uni. You could play those games on there. So, it's cool for them to have, and we'll see where they're at today, but to say, hey, this is where you get your retro gaming, guys, with Intellivision.
And and I think when I think of that, like I think of like family fun, sort of like, obviously like our interest right at this moment are kind of, like we mentioned Ark, like a game like that. And it's like, I'm going to spend some time with my mom this weekend. And like, if I took my PlayStation over there and like tried to get her involved in Ark, like it would be incredibly hard, like, for her to see that awesomeness of it. 'Cause there's a lot of, learning curve to go through there. But as I'm taking and what I saw from the gameplay in these games is that they're kind of like gamers like us and our listeners. Like this is something that you would do with non-gamers, like I mentioned, like that trip to Gatlinburg, like where ultimately because of the weather we ended up inside, and like I do have some good memories. Like I've been on planes like with my mom and gotten her to play Angry Birds even. And like, it's really funny to watch, like, just because like she has no reference point to start with, like, and so when you say like, click on something, she just sort of looks at you, and she's not a big computer person at all, but, ultimately I got her to figure it out and, like her, like something that would be just a rudimentary achievement for me in the game. Like when she did it, like we were super excited together, and just kind of watching her work her way through that was fun. So that's what I imagine. I imagine, just pulling out those old games and, maybe getting the opportunity. Like if I had this weekend there, I might say, hey Mom, I did some research, come to find out like you spent the equivalent of $1,000 on me at Christmas, and I really want to thank you for it. And hey, here's this system that goes back to those days, and it's good memories for me. Let's play this game, and and there that game is accessible for her. Like it, doesn't take a lot of learning to figure out how to kind of scroll to the right, and it
looks like that's what they're trying to market. They're trying to market this to families, younger kids. It looks like it's really family oriented, like you're not going to see any games with violence or ratings that aren't good for the kids, if you will.
Yeah.
It's for the family. And I saw a commercial. They obviously produced some marketing stuff, of course, and there's a commercial there. It's a very long commercial, actually. It's like a trailer or announcement or something like that. But they're very focused on it being for the kids and bringing the family together in front of the Amico to have that gaming experience as a family. At least that's what they're kind of getting after, it seems like.
Yeah, I'm getting that too. And I just picture, like I say, non-gamer friends, just almost like I'm thinking of, like when you play board games with your dad or something, it's kind of a rare occasion, to get someone that's not big into gaming to do it. But when you do, like you do have a good time, because it, kind of, it's like that fish out of water sort of situation that's kind of funny to watch, someone that's obviously a functioning adult, like struggle with something like that. So yeah, I think that's sort of like their target, who it's for. And I think the pandemic is something we've all been dealing with, and I think they're dealing with it too. They've really ran into like a number of delays and setbacks as this thing, kind of took life there in 2018, and
I'm just gonna. We can jump right to it. I mean, I'm reading this I'm using another cheat code here, going to Wikipedia. It says in February of this year, so 2 months ago, Tallarico stepped down from his role as CEO of Intellivision Entertainment, remaining on board. He's on the board as the company's president and largest shareholder. He was replaced by the company's former chief revenue officer, Phil Adam. In a statement provided to IGN, which I did a little bit of research for this episode on IGN as well. There wasn't a whole bunch there. Yeah, the company said that the company said the management shift was to better align its resources to face the new challenges of commencing production of the Amico. That same month, Intellivision Entertainment began its 4th round of fundraising, with corporate management acknowledging that the company has had 0 revenue since 2018 and cannot operate beyond July 2022 without further investment. This is a Wikipedia article, so, I mean, not that that's bad, but I'm sure this is an evolving situation. But it says here, money talk, essentially. I guess it's not too important, but it looks like, as you mentioned, ChukTomahawk, they're having some struggles. Do you think we're going to see the Amico come out like full release?
I'm gonna if
just
I'm really
drop
backed
it like
into
it's
a corner
hot,
and have to say yes or no. I'm gonna say no.
Wow.
No, I don't think so. I think
I just saw your shoulders, shrug. Oh.
Well, let's go back to Moore's law. Like it's like they started in 2018, so every 2 years, like 2020 and 22, like computing power has doubled. So, like what their parameters and everything, like. You got to get this stuff out fast, to
Do you
not
think it's
be
a money
obsolete
thing?
by the day it comes out.
Because sometimes sometimes it's a money thing, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes dumping money into the problem isn't always the solution. I mean, I feel like we can look at the Battlefield franchise and kind of see that. Like, I mean, I say that without really knowing the inner workings of that there, but I'm
the
speculating.
The volunteer football program would be a great example of that.
I don't even know what it is, but that sounded funny.
You know the story. Like, money just can't fix some things. Talent and too, circumstances right now.
We got to be
There's a lot
fair.
of places to put your entertainment dollars, and we're all watching Netflix and those sort of things these days, and I feel like like to be fair, my short answer to your question is no, but like my longer winded, like I said, if we go back to pretty much from 1984 on, they've been in this sort of limbo zone. Like they were looking at making the Tudor Vision, they were looking at
making deals with Nextel, making deals with cell carriers, making deals with they're just trying to.
So obviously, since Tommy is still on the board and things like I think that gives some confidence to investors, but the fact that they stopped that the investing campaign that they had going on there, that I think is a pretty big red flag, and also
I mean, it looks like they closed their fundraising campaign. It says, looks like there's a quote here from Ars Technica's Makovech, said that Intellivision's decision to close the campaign early rather than letting the fundraising campaign run its course was, quote, as bright and red a flag as it gets in the world of unreleased tech hardware. No bueno, hermano.
No
bueno.
I never let red flags stop me in my dating life, so I don't know why I would in my video game life either. But I think what I started to say there earlier, like no, I don't think we're going to see this Amico, but will we possibly see something from these folks and a new version of the Intellivision eventually? Maybe. I'm not giving up hope of that, but I think as time goes by, like they're either going to have to do a complete redesign, for today's, what RAM costs today and that kind of thing, or start from scratch, somehow.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I wasn't I after seeing the original Intellivision master component. And I am being biased here because I love all things retro. I just love that look, that style, that build, that wood grain, as you put it. And then looking how different the Amico is and how, futuristic they kind of tried to make it look, which it's fine. I wasn't particularly attracted to that. I think they should have kept more of a boxy style retro, with good hardware inside. And in my opinion, as a fan of reliability, I prefer reliability, quality as you described it, over ability. Like I'd much rather something be reliable and always works good, instead of it having all of these like perks and adjustments and features and all this stuff that are kind of janky. So I feel like if they can, regardless of the advancement of tech in that principle you were describing with the 2 years and how tech evolves, I think if they can put something on the market that's reliable, that will work well, that's functional, that's user friendly, that's not janky, that just you turn it on and you get your good retro gaming doses, and everyone can plug in easily without it being a mess or connection breaking down or all that stuff. Just a reliable platform in every sense of the word. That would be awesome. I'd if it were for me, I would get it. It's not for me because I have my PlayStation. I'm a PlayStation player. I got my PC. I'm a PC player, and that floats my boat. That floats my panga, if you will. If you know what a panga is.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what a panga is except you. A panga is a little fishing boat here in the area I live in Mexico. But anyways, yeah, if that floats your panga,
go watch those things be launched.
They get it done.
Got some mucho cojones.
They bring in the big fish on those little things.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they're not that little.
Jam it up on shore too.
Get up in it and again it.
To the max.
But anyways, I think that'd be and I think the price is right. Looks like it looks like they jacked the price up a bunch of times, but it's still not unreasonable. I'm seeing numbers at $80 for the physical games, 4 physical games for $80. I'm seeing numbers at $150. These aren't crazy names.
I saw
names,
I'm
crazy
seeing
prices.
Like $249 to $279 is one of the last numbers I saw there, and I think one of the criticisms is like, what else could I get for that money? And I think at this point you could probably buy a PlayStation 4 for that kind of money for sure. Probably an Xbox One even. So I think
Tá difícil.
Like if
it's hard.
It almost seems like for me, like if you were going to get one console, this wouldn't be it. But if
that's the thing, man.
Yeah, if you have a wad of cash and you're tricking out you're like that kid with adult money now, like me. Like you might get one of these, like just to have it, like or whatever. But I think as far as the main video game component system or replacing your PC, I don't know that it's going to do that.
I think enthusiasts would get it. I think families wherein like you have like parents that were maybe gamers or they still game and they know that gaming can be a interesting environment for younger kids, and maybe they don't want them to be in that, and they'll get them the Amico so they can have some family fun gaming without all the gnarliness that can be in the gaming environment, like we were talking about earlier.
Sure, exposing them to that
keep them away from that death cam or whatever it is on Warzone.
There's no Santa Claus, kid. The Easter Bunny's not real. Like, no. I agree. That is a market because, I have friends, that are my age that have kids, teenagers, and boy, it's a struggle. I think like keeping them off the game in the middle of the night and also what they might be exposed to.
Oh man, if I ever have kids, I'm gonna build I'm gonna make them build their own tree fort and make them live out in it. No power. I'll hang one of those thermal bags. They can shower. Yeah. And I'm gonna make them.
Maybe once a year at Christmas, come in and play an Amico.
I'll get them one of those little, those little pocket game things where you have to like raise a creature or something. What are those called? I don't even remember those. Gosh, what are? ¿Cómo se llamaban? I don't remember the name of those.
It reminds me of like
it doesn't matter.
Pokemon type thing. But
something like that.
It's like a Picho. Like it was like a little egg that you raised.
A little egg thing. Yeah. Anyways, gosh, right now someone's yelling at us. It's called the.
Yeah.
Oh man, a lot of brain farts this morning on this first episode. Yeah. Well, shoot. Let's see here. Let's do the notes. Don't want to forget anything. I think we've covered most everything we wanted to talk about. The Miko looks
I did forget
good.
to ask you, why did the console gamer cross the road?
I don't know.
To render the other side.
We're going to have to end every one of these episodes with the joke corner with ChukTomahawk.
Yeah, family friendly there. Guys, isn't that true?
Like the other side. Of course.
God, we experience that in art, don't we? Like you render that base out at the last second.
Oh man, I hate that, dude. Yeah, you're just you're flying around on your Wyvern, maybe on the RG. No, on the RG it's not so bad because they're slower. But if you're flying around on that Wyvern or that Manic Armor and you render in and there's a freaking base there with heavy turrets, yeah, your little balloon knot will tighten up real quick.
Bye bye. Yeah, it's a learning curve. I mean, now I get up higher in the air and turn the hell around, but like the first few times it happened, I just kept on plowing through and watched myself die. So yeah.
Quick question: if you were in charge of Intellivision right now, what would you be telling your crew? Like, if money wasn't an issue, what would you be advising?
It might be just that, like going back to that tenet of let's not get lost in what the circumstances are right now. Let's just accept that we've got a good idea here, and let's follow wherever that takes us. Like making the most quality thing that we could have. I mean, just the fact that this podcast exists, the fact that we're all of different ages, us and Tommy Tallarico or whatever, and we all have an interest in this, like shows that it is a good idea, and there is a market for it out there, and there's something tangibly beautiful here. But the circumstances of the market and what it costs to get something developed these days or manufactured, and whether it needs to be in the United States or in China or whatever, like let's just let all that kind of fall where it may, and keep jamming forward, making good games. And
yep.
Yeah, that's what I would imagine that experience would be like. If I really let myself go, I think I would really enjoy that experience.
Yeah. So. I'm going to be, I don't know, I'm not going to call it the devil's advocate, but I don't know. I want to be positive. I want to say positive things and good things, but man, I just don't think there's enough market out there for this thing to really explode and for it to be worth it for all the shareholders, or the people in charge. That's just my thought. I want to be wrong though, because I love retro. But yeah, I just think when you got PlayStations and PlayStation 5s and the Xbox line and PCs and Nvidia and all this, I mean, I keep going and going, and just Steam and all the whole gaming environment of today. It's a hard place for the little amigo to cut out a slice. I just feel like it's got to bump its shoulders in there, do some jujitsu just to find a space in this market. But man, it's hard because even younger, like I remember being 4, 5, and I remember a family member got me. I don't remember. I think it was my pops, man. I think he got me the Game Boy. And I was I was like 4 or 5 or something. And I remember going, fucking Game Boy. I want the Nintendo. I want, I just like, what is this shit? Like I never said that, but in my mind I was like, so what I'm getting at with that is they're trying to sell this off to families and stuff, little kids, and to keep it, keep it clean, if you will. I think that's a huge part of this. But even those little kids, man, they know what they want. They don't want the Miko, man. I want that PlayStation 5. Get me the digital edition. Pay the money, Dad.
Yeah. And as soon as they get that hint of that, there's like, we don't want them on Call of Duty or whatever because there's bad language, they're going to want to go there.
And as soon as they tame their first Tyrannosaurus Rex on Ark, it's all over, man. I remember seeing I remember hearing you through the chat, man, when you tamed your first Parasaur. You're like, man. And then you got that Cinemacrops and it was over. I lost you.
You're right.
We got raided because you were on that other map the whole day, dude, trying to find Cinemacrops. At the same time, our base is getting penetrated deep. They went deep.
Yeah,
I remember signing in and going like, "Where's my base?" The whole base is gone.
I'm still scarred. You're right. You're so right. Okay. I've got no excuses.
Mick going, well, how did that happen? Well,
wasn't John online?
Hey man, it's all good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I remember. No. I love it. I love how much you love Ark, man. Because it's my favorite game of all time. But
I'm right there with you, especially current games go.
Yeah. It's a current game we're playing, but I can tell you that it's my favorite game of all time because when you know, you know.
You do know, and you know,
I really loved Pokemon, but man,
you're just more reasons why we need our own server.
I really loved Metal Gear Solid, but man, there's something about we don't need to get into that. That's another episode for another day. I think we've done a great job talking about the Intellivision. The nostalgia behind it, the experience of getting that Intellivision back in the day. I think we covered how it grew, how it evolved. We've talked about the Amico. Any concluders, final thoughts, final comments, conclusions?
Yeah, I just hope folks come with us on this journey and kind of get in on the conversation with us and kind of see how these things relate to each other, like these initial innovations and how they led to the games that we have today. And I think it's fun to go back and look at those things and and then apply it to where things are going in the future as we look at these kind of new consoles and new old consoles.
Old consoles, man.
Flashback is
pillar of this podcast is going to be taking a look at these old systems, old platforms, old video games, old dynamics within video games. We're going to be looking at how multiplayer used to be, how multiplayer is today. We're going to be looking at how how DLC was looked at, is looked at the downloadable content we have today versus not having it back then. We're going to try and look at everything. And this is actually an opportunity to jump into the social media and contact info. We're going to see how this podcast goes. We hope that the listenership will grow. For now, we have an email, and we'd love to hear from you. It's Ovox and ChukTomahawk. No, excuse me. Is it just Ovox and Chuk?
It's Ovox and Chuk, yeah.
Ovox and Chuk at gmail.com. No spaces, no dots, no commas. OVOXANDCHUK. Chuk is spelled differently. It's CHUK. Ovox and Chuk at gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Recommendations, thoughts, anything. Throw it our way.
Yeah. I agree. I'm excited to hear that, get some feedback, and hear what folks think about what we've been talking about, and and share some of their experiences with us for sure.
Yeah, anything good out there, we'll be happy to share it on the podcast. I get to choose the next topic for the next episode. I think we're going to try and release these things bi-weekly. We'll do our best, keep it flowing consistently, keep everyone stoked. And we'll shoot. What else? You got any final jokes for us?
Pretty well covers it. I think I've hit you with all my good material. I'm going to save it for next time.
Are we forgetting anything? I don't think we are. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. This has been New Wave Gaming, Episode 1, Intellivision. We'll probably come up with a swift, cool name for the episode. But, yeah, if you like it, recommend it to other gamers out there or people you think might be interested in hearing the chit-chat, and we'll get back at you in the next episode. Thank you. ChukTomahawk, thank you for your time, sir. I love you.
Ovox. Love you too, brother. Signing out.
Hasta pronto, way. Talk to you soon.
Adios.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.